Non-Diet Yogi, a podcast for folks who want to form a deeper and more direct relationship with food, their bodies, and the natural world around them without falling into the trappings of #big wellness. I'm your host, Casey Conroy, non-diet dietitian, naturopath in training, and yoga teacher. So, I've been thinking about you, the listener, and the kind of feedback I've been receiving from all of you wonderful people, and I have realized that although overcoming fat phobia, overcoming weight and size stigma, and overcoming healthism are central themes of this podcast, these are actually inseparable from other social justice issues such as racism, classism, sexism, homophobia, xenophobia, white supremacy. These social justice issues that, just like weight stigma, are burning through the yoga, wellness, spirituality communities. Despite how fervently many well-meaning New Age spiritualists may deny this. Uncoincidentally, this tendency has become especially poignant and discordant with the uprisings that are happening at the moment. Uprisings against police brutality and systemic racism endured by Black and Indigenous people of colour. And the responses to this uprising that I've witnessed in the wellness, yoga, whatever you want to call it, community have ranged from genuine support and compassion to this kind of feigned solidarity to outright oppression, like outright grossness. And I think it's highly incongruent for a community that espouses love and light and all that kind of thing, to basically push the notion that all lives matter. Because, of course, all lives matter. And now is the time for us to recognise the systematic oppression and struggles of Black lives and Black people whose voices have been historically repressed. And for those holding privilege to please step out of the limelight. And this is not what I always see happening in the yoga community. On a similar note, it's pretty hypocritical, I think, for yogis to justify the lived experiences of racially based suffering, police brutality, and death with the idea that, it's just their karma. Or, this is a good one. We should just focus on love, not fear and hate. And that if, we just did that, this stuff would go away or at least be comfortably swept back under the rug. Saying with a hint of hippie side-eye that we should just focus on love, not fear and hate, or saying, what good will the protests do? They're just creating more violence. To me, these are kind of passive-aggressive ways to further vilify Black folks by blaming them as a collective for the looting and violence that is a small part of what have been mostly peaceful protests. But of course, the media does not focus on the largely peaceful protests. They tend to focus on the looting and violence. And this is violence that's not advocated by the leaders of the Black Lives Matter movement and by people like Terrence Floyd, George Floyd's brother, who said, we are proud of the protests, not of the destruction. So up until this is a bit of an aside, but up until my personal Facebook account was hacked and irreversibly disabled a few weeks ago, which is a whole other story I will not get into here, these kind of individualist, classist, off the cuff, maybe even well-meaning remarks were the kind of crap that I'd been hearing and seeing on social media pretty much every day. You know, those beautiful memes of a NASA picture of a galaxy saying, "We are all one, focus on love, not fear, I don't see colour," etc., etc. And you know, although there are many people who actively recognize and rise up against this kind of sentiment, I still get whiffs of it, sometimes more than whiffs of it, in yoga studios and health food stores, on flyers for wellness workshops even. And of course, I don't tend to go to workshops where I'm sensing that there's going to be this kind of new age utopian individualist vibe there, but guessing that if the message is on the flyer, it may be woven throughout the actual workshop. I just think, you know, what's the point of raising your vibration to lift up all of humanity at a meditation circle or virtual meditation circle that consists almost entirely of white people? Or, you know, a women's circle where it's all white women wearing crystals. You know, not that there's anything wrong with white women. I'm a half white woman. Not that there's anything wrong with wearing crystals. I fucking love crystals. I have heaps of them. They're great. But if we're just rocking up to stuff like that to lift our vibrations, but as soon as we leave that women's circle, we're going back to affirming, you know, all lives matter. And ignoring systemic racism and kind of pretending it's all okay because it doesn't affect us, then that's kind of missing the point. It's not okay. And I get it. It takes time and research and a desire to look into these issues more deeply. It's really uncomfortable. And it takes a bit of, you know, effort to sit with our discomfort and to recognize that we are indoctrinated into a society of systemic racism. We do hold implicit biases. We are all on our own trajectory and we are all making mistakes. Myself, definitely making lots of mistakes all the time and just trying to learn from them. And when you know better, you do better. And some of us in the yoga kind of wellness community I'm a part of, or communities I'm part of, some of us just don't seem to want to learn or listen. We'd rather stay in our utopian bliss bubbles of ignorance where complicated social justice issues can be kind of easily explained in this offhand way and then disregarded with vague kind of new age concepts of twisted karma, you know, like everything happens for a reason. There's no fear, only love. This kind of pattern where people are ignoring their privilege and not acknowledging that and turning away from these issues out of a sense of personal discomfort or discord, maybe. Or even worse, this is what kills me. Worse is where privilege is actually dressed up with bindies and glitter and kind of rebranded as radical. And when not wearing a mask when you really should be is deemed as an act of liberation and truth-seeking and not being kept quiet or something like that. There's nothing radical about that kind of ignorance. It's not enlightening. It's not new age in the sense that it's uplifting. It's just silly. So, the point I'm trying to make, my plan is to widen the lens of this podcast a little. And this has already kind of been happening. I want to create some more discourse around the wider social justice issues in the yoga, wellness, spirituality kind of worlds, natural health kind of worlds, and offer some good conversations for you all to chew on. I have some yummy interviews with guests coming up that address this stuff. And I want to make sure this podcast serves not just non-diet yogis, in air quotes, But anyone immersed in the wellness world, especially, or who's simply just interested in looking after their health, their physical, mental, spiritual health, who also want social justice. Anyone who might be into yoga, herbs, growing food, or whatever, but who's also become disillusioned, perhaps, by the classism and the lack of real awareness and the multiple forms of stigma. Even the tendency to things like conspiracy theories and anti-science sentiment that I witness a lot of in the wellness community, and not in a sense of being open to both the scientific and maybe a more esoteric or lived experience sense of seeing things, but just flat out anti-science, fertile ground for conspiracy theories. I've really noticed this pattern over the last couple of years, and definitely seen it ramped up in the last couple of months. So there's this, a lot of problems that I see, and I call it hashtag big wellness. There's this materialism as well. There's just a lot of issues that I really want to talk about and bring out into the open, glitter and bindies included, cultural misappropriation included, and So, you might be a health practitioner or a yogi or a front porch permaculture newbie or a fitness advocate, or you're just interested in looking after your health so that you can do other things that matter to you. Your well-being may involve all the herbs, or it might depend on big pharma, in air quotes. It might depend on life-saving medications. It might depend on antidepressants for some time, or anti-epileptic medications, as it does for some of my friends and family. We're really going for a both and model of healing here. We're going for holistic, and I mean that in the truest sense of the word, not the marketed holistic patchouli smelling doTERRA oil selling sense, but truly holistic sense of the word, truly holistic health, without all the judgment, the crazy conspiracy theories, and just bullshit that unfortunately surrounds and is kind of definitely woven through modern wellness culture. Okay, so this is a big introduction. So I think I'm just going to move straight into this episode now. This is episode 13, Fitness and Women's Blood Rites, Tracking Menses, Not Macros, and Embracing Menopause with Rachelle Ballard-Clayton. And while we don't talk directly about racism or the Black Lives Matter movement in this podcast episode, I am covering that in upcoming episodes, so tune in for those. We do, however, address another marginalized group that the wellness and fitness industries tend to very much disregard or pathologize, and that is menopausal women. I think it's definitely high time that we chatted about this and about women's cycles and life phases more generally. I know that leading up to this conversation with Rachelle, I was so intrigued to learn more about well-being for women who are 40 and older. The majority of my clients in my nutrition practice are 35 to 60-ish, and I'm personally fast approaching this bracket. I'm a few months off 35, so I'm really, really wanting to get to know more about this stuff, and also the societal and social justice issues that get in the way of us accessing helpful support and information as we move into this really crucial phase of our lives. So in this interview with Rachelle, we talk about how she trains women and how she runs a fitness business without body transformations or weight loss challenges. We talk about the importance of strength training as opposed to just cardio and yoga for women, especially those over 30 years of age. movement and the menstrual cycle, adapting your training to the hormonal fluctuations of our cycle, whether that's a menstrual cycle or a mood cycle for perimenopausal women, what movement might look like for a midlife woman, how to work with and not against your body, especially as we begin to transition into perimenopause, and what that means, why we might find ourselves at this life stage feeling less likely to move, more burnt out than ever, and what we can do about that. Understanding what our bodies are doing by tracking cycles, how to work with and not against your body, why some weight gain around menopause is normal and protective, focusing on what you can do and understanding you better. And we also mention a few resources around women's menstruality and the power of menopause. In addition, if you listen to the end of this episode, so after the interview is finished, I have recorded some post-interview thoughts on rites of passage in a woman's life, also known as the blood mysteries of menarche, childbirth, and menopause, and the way that we see this in the patriarchal society that we live in. You can have a guess as to what I'm going to say there. The phenomenal benefits women get from strength training. I'll talk about that a little bit more for those of you who are interested. Better indicators of fitness than a six-pack or how lean you are. Addressing the loaded question of does weight training make you bulky? Hashtag yoga every damn day with no other form of movement, why I think that's nonsensical, and what yoga is missing that strength training can provide. And finally, what my own personal movement practice looks like nowadays. Hint, it's not yoga every damn day. So, Rachelle's bio. Rachelle owns Me Active, that's MEE Active, a women's health and movement coaching practice on the Gold Coast of Australia, and she delivers her programs worldwide. She creates a safe space for midlife women to step off the sidelines and connect deeply with their mind and body. If you love this podcast, please subscribe and leave a rating and review on Apple iTunes. To do so is really easy peasy. From the show page, you just scroll down until you see the rating and review section with the 5 stars. I would love a 5-star rating and review. For even more love, if you really, really love the podcast, or even if you just kind of like it, you can become a Patreon of the podcast for $2 US a month and receive non-diet yogi bonuses in addition to the podcast. I often am lucky enough to have my guests create or offer some beautiful Patreon gifts. For this podcast, Rachelle has kindly offered 2 bonuses for Patreon subscribers. The first is a hot flushes video tutorial, which is totally downloadable. And the second is a workout guide for a strong body, which is also downloadable. You can access a growing library of goodies, including offers, PDF guidebooks, audio downloads, meditations, herbal giveaways, and of course, Rachelle's awesome offerings, all at the $2 a month level on the Non-Diet Yogi Patreon. Alrighty, let's get to my interview with Rachelle Ballard-Clayton. Hi, Rachelle, and welcome to the Non-Diet Yogi podcast. Thank you very, very much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Casey. It's a lovely privilege to be here with you today.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. It's I think this conversation, it has been waiting kind of just to burst forth, because I feel like there's a lot that you are an expert on that we've really needed to talk about on this podcast and just in general so far. So I can't wait.
Awesome.
Rachelle, we met in a kind of funny way, I guess. And just to let the listeners know, we were just talking about this, but there was a call out. A journalist contacted me because one of the major TV stations was running a story on detox diet disasters, I think essentially was the topic.
Yeah.
And they reached out to me. They wanted some experts on the topic, and asked if I knew anyone else who might be open to speaking to that. And I don't know, I can't remember exactly how we stumbled across it, but you popped up, and that's how we met. The story, I think, went to air, but they just ended up with an abundance of people with really extreme stories about terrible detoxes. You know, it's not hard to find stories like that.
No.
There was someone unfortunately who nearly died of a colonic. But long story short, they didn't end up wanting or needing us experts. Haha.
Yeah.
TV
Yeah.
for you. So,
Yeah.
but it was all good because we made our connection through
We
that.
did.
And and I just,
That was
since then I've
awesome.
checked. Yeah, it's funny how things happen sometimes.
It is. Yeah. How you meet other people when you're supposed to. Yeah.
Yeah. And when I
Yeah.
found out about you and learnt where you're based, which is Coomera on the northern end of the Gold Coast, I was kicking myself because we just moved. We were there for a year and a half. We moved up here to Sunshine Coast just 10 months ago. So you were hanging out in the same suburb I was living. There was a health at every size, passionate,
Yeah.
person who was just in the same suburb, and I didn't even know you were there. So I was sad about
No.
that.
We missed
But
each other.
we did, but it's all good because now we're here.
Yep,
um,
exactly.
and Rachelle, I'm just so intrigued to learn more about well-being for women who are 40 and up. I suppose, the majority of my clients are between 35 and say 55. And I'm proud to say I am sliding into that bracket this year. So I want to learn more about us and about women. So maybe we could start with giving the listeners a bit of your backstory. How you came to be a personal trainer specializing in training women at midlife.
Well, it's a long story, but I'll try and cut it down as short as I can. So I entered the fitness industry at the age of 40. Having no prior experience of fitness whatsoever. And actually, as a child, you would see me running from the PE teacher trying to get away from sport as much as possible. But I would be climbing up trees and on horses and doing all those sorts of things when I was a child. I just wasn't into sport or fitness as such. My background is actually retail management for most of my life. And then, unfortunately, I, had some childhood trauma, and there's a big backstory there, but I fell into becoming, involved in wanting to lose weight and the fitness industry, just as not as a personal trainer, as a person. And went down the rabbit hole of disordered eating and body image issues and all those sorts of things in my 30s. And ended up getting some help for all of that, and came out the other side a lot stronger and with a lot more knowledge, also while I was studying to become a PT. So at first, when I got into the industry, I'm very upfront about saying, I wanted to help people lose weight and change their life and all of that sort of things, because that's what I had done, and I was going to do the same thing, when in actual fact it is very different to what you think it's going to be. And the catalyst for the change for me was seeing all of my clients in so much pain around their thoughts about their body and how they wanted to lose weight. I just questioned every single thing that I was doing and thinking, why am I doing this? And why am I trying to support these people, but support them in the wrong way? So I did a real 360 on my personal training business and changed, myself, and got a lot of help for myself. And now I'm at a stage where I'm 47. So I've been doing this for 8 years, and I now don't help any women lose weight. So I am not a transformation coach. I am not a weight loss coach. I am none of those things. You won't see any 12-week challenges with me. All it is about joyful movement, helping them understand their lifestyle factors, helping them understand their hormones, their mental health, and just their general well-being. So that's what I do in a nutshell. And of course, because I'm 47, you know, I attract people my age. And so, you know, I sort of just fell into it that way. And, you know, going through perimenopause, going through menopausal transition, it's important that I understand what's going on with my body so that I can better help other people as well. And then reach out to other allied health professionals that can help them as well.
I love hearing people's stories, and I loved hearing your story. It's so often the case. It's so often the case, isn't it, that we end up in this area because of our own history of getting stuck, and as is so common with so many women and people, going down those alleyways of wanting to lose weight and body transformation and all that, and the disordered eating that often comes along with it, and then changing our tune along the way as we find other ways to relate to ourselves and our bodies, and to actually really focus on caring for ourselves. I mean, as a dietitian, I went down a very similar path. Got into dietetics because I had my own disordered eating issues and body dysmorphia stuff, and came out and I was gung-ho, let's lose weight, everyone. And I look back on that time and just like, oh man, if I could have just 5 minutes with that person, what would I say to her? But so exciting to see how your journey morphed and where you are now. And I think it's so cool that there are no challenges, there's no transformations or restricted behaviors in any of your training programs. I've, you know, had a really good look at what you offer, because as we all know, we live in such a weight-centric, fat-phobic culture, and weight loss is, in every gym I've been to, I'm sad to say, weight loss is a huge draw card for people. So I'm wondering, Rachelle, how do you draw clients in without using these things?
So I purposely decided to move away from it. And I now train women that are more on the rehabilitation side of things. So for instance, women that may not have worked out or had fitness in their life before, they might have, issues with their spine, or they might have pelvic floor issues. I get a lot of people that have pelvic floor issues, and helping them transition into safe movement for them. So I moved right away from the general fitness side of things. For me, it just wasn't fulfilling enough, and it was too centered around weight loss, and started diving into more about how I could help people find movement in a way that suited them. And it first started off as just modified movement. You know, I had at the very start, I had a lot of clients that were in larger bodies. And of course, you know, they have restrictions in the way that they can move. So I found different ways to do different exercises for them. And then that morphed into more of a rehabilitation role, and then more into that pelvic floor core role as well. So many different clients from so many different walks of life with all different complications with their bodies, I see all the time.
Yeah. Wow. And so what I'm hearing is that you seem to have tapped into a population where it's really necessary for you to fit movement to the person, and not just get that person moving for the sake of weight loss or fitness even, but rather to find ways for that unique individual to benefit from and enjoy movement again. And really, that says a lot. I think we should make all movement that way, and eating, and all of
Yeah,
that. It really has to fit the person, not the person fitting some kind of paradigm, that we're trying to shove everyone into.
totally agree. And what works for one doesn't work for the other. And I'm always saying this, we're so individual. All of us have individual needs. So we need to meet those needs in any way that we can. So I strip away the, can't do this, can't do that. Okay, so what can we do? Let's focus on the can. Let's get that done. Don't worry about the can't.
And that attitude and that can-do vibe really shine through in your videos, which I've checked out. They're wonderful. Your instruction is so clear. It's easy to follow. It's motivating as well. You've just got a really wonderful way of educating. You're an educator. And so, I guess if we could venture a bit more specifically into how do you support people women's, or otherwise, at midlife, or maybe how would you tell our listeners who might be tuning in and wondering, well, what should I be doing at this stage in my life, whether in terms of movement, in terms of what's going on hormonally? What would you say to that?
So I would say the biggest thing to do here, especially if you're transitioning into that perimenopausal stage, I would say listen to your body, start tracking your hormonal cycles if you are getting a period. If you're not tracking, if you are not getting a period, then you can do it just by tracking your moods and how you're feeling. And over a 3-month time frame, you'll see a definite pattern start to form here. Go and see your doctor, find out where you are with all your blood tests, get everything looked at. That's the first thing I'll ask people to go and do, is get your blood tests done so we know where you are. How are your vitamin D levels? Where's your estrogen? Where's your progesterone? What are we doing here? What stage of life are we in? And then what are your symptoms? Have you got symptoms? And then coming down into the movement side of things, what is it that you like to do if you want to move? What is it that you enjoy doing? What is it that you have restrictions with? And then we build a plan around that. So for me, getting my people from the rehabilitation phase into some form of strength training is key, because at this stage of life for women, strength training is so important to help with our bone mass as we move forward.
Oh, I feel so excited when you say that, because I love strength training, and I've only recently discovered it in the last couple of years since I had my first baby, and just noticed how weak and sore I was, despite years of cardio and running and driving my body into the ground with all that kind of stuff, because I wanted to stay in a smaller body. And then somehow I learned along the way, like, actually, I just want to be able to hold my kid and not get a sore back. So once my second was born, I gravitated towards strength training, and I have not looked back. Now that I understand just how important it is, for women, especially once we're past the age of 30, I wish I'd known this sooner.
So do I. I wish I'd known that sooner as well. And that's, something that I try and get out there as much as I can, is you need to strength train. And it doesn't have to be all big weights and gung-ho and bro type material. It doesn't need to be like that.
Good.
We break it down. Because a lot of women are scared of strength training, I find. Lots of women are really scared about it. So we need to break that stigma down. That's, again, that fitness industry stigma. We need to break that away and go, hey, this is what you can do, and it doesn't look like what you think it looks like.
Yeah, exactly. And it could actually be really fun and feel really good in your body. And to touch back also, you mentioned how tracking your hormone, the cyclical nature of our bodies, whether you're premenopausal or moving into that transition phase, being somewhat aware of those cycles, it makes a huge difference, doesn't it? It gives you so much information about your body.
It does, and it comes down to that mind-body connection. So, as a general rule, women who are in the middle of their cycle, this is not always the way, but as a general rule, women who are in the middle of their cycle are ready to go. They can go harder, they can go longer, they can lift heavier. Then as we move into that later part of the cycle when we're, close to bleeding, we feel a little bit more inward. We feel a little bit more lacking in energy. We want to eat more. And so we need to honor all of that and back off. Back off from the strength training side of things. Don't lift as heavy. Don't go as hard. And so we start working out a plan. And when my clients come into me every week, okay, where are we in our cycle today? Remind me where you are in your cycle, because it's really important that I get that right for that person that day. I don't want to give them something really heavy to lift if they're just about to bleed.
Exactly. And I think that's so wise, and it really taps back into a very old understanding and appreciation of our animal bodies. And I mean, I since tracking my cycles, I don't know, I've been doing it on and off for a decade or more now, but as the disordered eating went out the window, which, as you know, messes with your cycles, and I lost my period for quite a while, but it's all been normalized since. And there is a big difference between how I'm feeling, say on day 7, day 10, day 12, getting near ovulation, when I'm like, woohoo, electric, let's go, let's lift that heavy deadlift or whatever it is, compared to day 26, 27, when I'm premenstrual, I'm just like, I am going to do shavasana with a bunch of props and an eye pillow.
Yep, exactly.
Listening to that, just, I think it really pays back in terms of the benefit that we get from, whether that's a deadlift or shavasana or something in between. If we're not listening to our bodies, or even if we're following a gym strength program. I remember at my old gym, they would just give us 4-week blocks of powerlifting I used to do, and there was no consideration for where a woman's cycle was. And I remember saying to the head trainer, like, look, wouldn't it make sense to make the deload week the week where menstruating women are menstruating? Like, wouldn't that be awesome? So
wouldn't that be a great idea?
Nudge, nudge.
Exactly.
So cool to see that you're doing that, Rachelle. I think it just makes so much sense.
Well, it does. And there's so much science coming out around that now too. So, which is even better. So I'm a bit of a nerd in this fact. I'm always reading all the science, the latest science that's coming up. Because I think that's really important too. The more we evolve, the more we know and understand, then the more we can pass on to our people.
That's exactly right. And that understanding comes from, reading scientific literature. It also comes from just our own experience in our own bodies, and also from training or working with other people. So bringing it all together, I think, is what will make us really well-rounded practitioners. So I agree. Okay, so let's get a bit more specific. We've mentioned a few different things and strength training in general, but what might strength training, what might this kind of movement look like for a midlife woman or man? What would that look like?
Well, again, it depends on the individual. So there's a few things that when I am talking a person through what we're going to do, there's a few questions. If they weren't with me, there's a few questions that I would get them to ask themselves. How are you feeling today? On a scale of 1 to 10, or on a red traffic light, amber traffic light, green traffic light, if you want to do it that way. How stressed are you today? How hydrated and nourished are you today? Where are you in your cycle? Yet again. And then moving on from there, depending on what they would answer, the biggest go-to for women and men at this age moving forward is mobility work. So a lot of mobility work before we do the body of the session. So there's got to be all of this I'm writing to biotensegrity, so a lot of connective tissue work. So we've got to get into the tissue, unstuck it, if that's a word, unstick it, and
Totally
then
a word.
yeah, I just made it up anyway, and then get the movement through in the body from there. So it's really important we do 10 to 15 minutes worth of mobility warm-up work. What that looks like depends on the person in front of me, because it can be different for everybody. Then the body of the workout, you're looking at maybe, 10 to 15 minutes body of the workout. And then big time, as you would understand, is stretch, 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 stretch at the end of the session, and more mobility work as well. So that's the 3 different areas that I'm looking at. Breath work also comes into play there as well. I'm a huge believer in breath work when we're doing our whole session.
Yeah.
So, oftentimes women will come into me and they have not even taken a deep breath throughout the whole day. They're just go, 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 go. So the first thing we will do, because I identify straight away. So have you ever taken a breath today? And they're like, no. Okay. First thing we do is breath work, which sets them up for the session.
And it would put them in such a much more responsive state to their bodies if they can get out of their heads into their bodies. That breath work, that can be the bridge right there to just cross over from brain dominance to getting into that body.
To body, and that's something that I work with. If they're not responding to the breath as well, there are certain things that movements that I will do that takes them out of their brain into their body, because they can't think about everything else that's going on, because they have to concentrate on what's going on with their body. So I do use a few tricks, which they all think I'm very weird, around that as well.
Yeah, yes. I find the same thing often with yoga, or at least I did find that when I was working in, guts of the Gold Coast, Miami, Mermaid Beach, where people would rush in and, a lot of them would just skip Shavasana at the end. It's like, okay, let's take a deep breath and then let's see if you can balance on one foot in tree pose for a few breaths. Just get out of your head, because when you're balancing like that, you have to focus. You can't be stressing about whatever's happened at work that day. So
exactly.
They're good tricks.
They are good tricks, and I love them.
Rachelle, what do you find are the most common complaints in your clients? In the peri-menopausal women I see a lot of hot flushes, not getting good quality sleep, tiredness, brain fog, that kind of thing. What do you see, and how do you work with some of those common symptoms?
Yeah. So insomnia is huge. Stress is huge. I see most of the women that I deal with are very highly stressed women, because of their lifestyle factors and their work and, all of that sort of stuff. Hot flushes, everything that you mentioned, really. The brain fog is another one. Night sweats is another one. Achy bones, achy joints is another one. So again, it depends on the individual, and I know I keep coming back to that. So it's very hard to be completely specific unless I'm talking to the person in front of me. So I will obviously get them to go and see their doctor and get things ruled out, get their blood tests done. Then we look at things like, are they on magnesium? Are they getting enough sunlight? Do they need vitamin D? Are they eating enough fruits and veggies, colourful veggies, and then of course referring on to dietitians if we need to. So I've got a good referral network of other allied health that I need to help me with this. Then we look at, obviously, pelvic dysfunction can be another major one, and I see a lot of that. Even though they may not even know that they have pelvic dysfunction. So then I will send them off to a women's health physio. And so it's a biopsychosocial model that we come back to constantly looking at the person. So the biggest factor that I see, though, that keeps coming back to the same thing over and over again with many of my clients is teaching them how to de-stress, even if it's for a small window during the day. Teaching them about the language that they use around their body and their thoughts is another huge thing. Drinking enough water is a major thing, because a lot of them are dehydrated. They don't drink enough water, which makes your tissues in your body all sticky and, you know, not good for your organs, not good for overall health. And then once the stress comes into line, if I can get that stress to come into feeling better about themselves, then the insomnia doesn't seem so bad. The hot flushes don't seem so bad. The night sweats don't seem so bad. So again, it takes a village. It's not, you know, it does take a village to get it all into this, and tracking their cycle, you know, tracking their moods, so they understand what their body's doing. I find a lot of them don't understand what their body's doing.
Yeah. And why it's doing it, you know, why all these stress hormones are being pumped out. You know, our body is really just trying to preserve and look after itself when we pump a lot of cortisol out when we've got low level chronic stress, and to understand why that's happening and how that changes our bodies, and then how we can start to unstuck, to borrow your word, how to start to get, you know, give the body a bit of a break, support ourselves in ways that maybe we're not being supported. Just how powerful that can be for our hormones, our physiology, our mental state. I think it's so incredible that you do all that kind of work as a personal trainer, that you're focusing on stress and sleep and hormonal changes. It's not something I see a bunch of personal trainers doing.
No, but it's so, it matters so much more than the movement overall, you know. That's why I struggle with the word personal trainer. I don't sort of feel like I have ever really fit into that. Because I do so much other stuff around movement. Movement's one part of what I do.
And that's great, because to support our clients, I think we need to be quite holistic and quite integrated, because all these areas matter, and, you know, movement does matter and nutrition matters, but they're slices of a bigger pie. Okay, absolutely. So as you were speaking before, you know, you mentioned pelvic dysfunction and a few other things. One of the things that I've noticed is a big source of distress for a lot of women moving through menopause is weight gain. And of course, we both practice from a weight neutral paradigm. But I find that it's interesting during menopause, because it's a time of such transition. It's a big time. A lot is going on mentally, physically, spiritually, even, you know, there are divorces maybe, or like complete shifts and changes of location, or wanting to change careers, and kids growing old, becoming teenagers, leaving home, etc. So really big changes are happening at this stage. And similar to pregnancy and similar to puberty, what I've learned is that menopause is one of the highest risk phases of life for developing disordered eating and eating disorders. I've met women who didn't diet their whole lives, lucky things, but started during perimenopausal, when they notice their bodies changing. How do you, like, when women come to you with those kind of concerns, where do you go from there in terms of helping them, supporting them, educating even?
So educating, I can't remember who wrote it, but there was a brilliant article. I think it was Jessica. I'll have to look it up and I'll send it to you. Anyway, she wrote a brilliant article that I have kept and that I pass on. about getting a little bit of a tummy when you go through perimenopause and menopause, and it's because of the estrogen and all of that. Your body goes into a protective mode, and so a little bit of a tummy is actually a protection mechanism, because our bodies are so absolutely intelligent and know better than us.
Aren't they just?
Yes, to help us with estrogen. So as your estrogen declines through as you go through. So I always keep that article and I pass that on to my clients. However, the biggest factor that I see with perimenopausal and menopausal women is that the levels of stress are high. As you said, there's so much that's going on. You know, they've got elderly parents that they're trying to look after. Their kids are leaving. You know, they're growing up and doing their own thing, and there's so much. There could be divorce, there could be, you know, marital issues, there could be location changes. And so stress is like the root of all evil, as we know, for our body. And so that can also cause weight gain, depending on the person. So I don't focus on that, though. I wouldn't say that to the person. What I would say is, okay, so you've got a lot going on in your life right now. There's this, and this pointed out. Your body is going through a lot at the same time. There's this, and this that's going on. So let's not focus on weight. Let's focus on getting you moving in a way that feels good, gaining strength, gaining fitness, whatever your goals are. And then, you know, if you want to go and see someone about weight, then I would recommend a non-diet dietitian. And that's what I would do.
Yeah, beautiful.
So I actually had a lady last night ask me, what's a non-diet dietitian?
It is a mouthful, isn't it?
Yeah, like, what do they do? She just couldn't get it. So I explained to her what you do. And she's like, oh, that sounds really interesting. Yeah. So again, it's just getting the understanding, the education out there that there's different ways to look at things.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. And just going back to, you know, all the stresses that you mentioned are on women going through this amazing and very powerful life transition.
Yeah.
To put a focus on weight loss would be adding another pretty big stress to that pile, because as we know, you know, all the things that, you know, all the methods that people use to attempt to lose weight, not to even talk about how unsuccessful that is long term, but those methods, whether they're, you know, prolonged, unpleasant, non-joyful movement or dieting and restriction, are all quite stressful on the body. So we're going to be only adding more stress to what's already probably a substantial pile if we did this. And that's generally what I find going to just send that cortisol and those stress hormones up even more.
That's right. And I try and explain that as best as I can to them. You know, sometimes you win some and sometimes you don't. And,
That's right.
you know, you've got to let go at some stage and just be there as a support person for them when they want to talk. All you can do is give them the education and the information. And I think that that's powerful in itself, because if they ever have a moment of reflection, they're going to go, okay, yep, but Rachelle did say that.
It's, yeah, exactly. You might, you know, a little memory might be jogged and they'll be like, I remember hearing about that funny old non-diet thing a while ago.
Yeah.
It sounds like you're a really wonderful intersection for a lot of people, because it's like, you know, where to send people when they need to see a non-diet dietitian or pelvic floor women's health physio. But coming to you, sounds like a really wonderful way to get people the support they need, whilst at the same time relearning movement. And ways to support your body with movement.
Agreed. Because, you know, a lot of them come in, either they have never moved before, so they've got no clue, or they've been fit in their younger years and feel very let down by their body at this stage of their life, because they can't do what they once could do. So then we have to relearn everything and then find what I call a new normal of what their body responds to well, and building up from there.
And how wonderful and empowering it must be to have that knowledge of, okay, my body at 20 is going to be different to my body at 48. This is why, and this is what I can do to support it, and to be able to do, you know, play whatever sport, or to do whatever, you know, hike or whatever it is movement wise that people are wanting to do. That it's still possible if we support our bodies. And it's not all possible. I mean, you know, if someone's wanting to, I don't know, enter bodybuilding competition, it's probably not going to be the kind of client you see. But in terms of maintaining quality of life and joyful movement, it sounds like that's your jam.
That is definitely my jam. That's all I want for people, is to be able to move in a way that feels good. Yeah, for them, like as an individual, and understand their body. I think that's really important. It's okay to rest. It's okay to move. It's okay to do both of those things, but don't beat yourself up because you haven't done one or the other.
Yeah, I love that flexible approach. And in fact, the rest is a really crucial part to gaining strength in the long term, isn't it?
Yes, correct. Yes, you've got to have those rest days to be able to gain more strength in the long term. Of course, it makes sense. We can't just keep going like little Energizer bunnies and expect results. It's just not going to happen.
No. Our bodies will quickly tell us, especially as we get older, that no, please don't do that to me.
Yeah, exactly. It talks.
Yeah. And so I'm curious, Rachelle, what is your favorite form of movement? Like, how do you like to support your body with movement?
I love strength training. That's my number one. Deadlifting is my thing. So I love doing that, and I don't get to do it as often as what I'd like. So I aim for twice a week. And if I hit twice a week, I'm really happy.
Yes.
And then I also love to walk, and I love to hike. I love to kayak. I love to be out in the water. You know, I have so many different ways that I like to move.
Yes. Oh, yes. I'm so happy to hear all that. I'm a deadlift fan as well. Deadlifting, I just feel that's my most comfortable thing to do. It feels good in my body. And I think maybe there's a part of me that's like, well, there's this conditioning that we're brought up with as little girls and then young women, that we can't be strong, and that is not for us. And so to just smash those beliefs out of the water feels really good. It's fun.
It does feel really good. And my daughter will often, you know, she calls me all sorts of funny names like John Cena and Dwayne The Rock Johnson, because she sees me. She's 14, so she, you know, they see everything, and she sees me in here lifting and you know, doing all of that. And I think that's really important as well, to make sure that your children are seeing you joyfully move.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. How wonderful that is for your daughter to see her mum just rocking the deadlifts and being strong, because physical strength translates. I think it translates across to other, you know, mental strength.
It so does. And I see that in my clients a lot too. You know, someone that has come in maybe with pelvic dysfunction and just has given up completely. And has been told that, you know, they can't do a lot because they've got to be careful, et cetera, which I understand. But then working with them through that whole program, and then seeing them perform a deadlift, you know, at whatever weight suits their body, it just lights up their whole being, because they can finally see that their body can do something. And then that does translate out into their mental health so much. You see such a change in them.
Yes. Yeah.
I love
absolutely. That must be a trip to see, because
it's amazing.
I felt I felt that in myself when I started lifting
Yeah.
weights specifically. I mean, we obviously don't just jump into lifting
No.
barbell and stuff like that, but I started with a friend of mine was a trainer, and he had to convince me. He really had to convince me to start doing some form of strength training. Before that, I was very resistant, but I love my friend, and he did convince me, and I started with I think he was maybe 3 or 4 months old, my baby strapped to me when I was on the TRX doing stuff.
Yeah.
And I just fell in love with how I felt immediately after, as well
Mm.
as how strong I started to become and how much less
Yes.
pain I was in
Yes.
as my body got
Agreed.
stronger. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's quite magical strength training. I really just I'm
It
all
is.
for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And it's important. It's so important for so many different reasons, especially for women at that midlife. I mean, it's important for any age, don't get me wrong, but
Yeah.
it is
Yeah.
for us at this midlife age, it's so important that we do it. And then
Yeah.
even further, like I've got people that are 60, 70, my oldest is 88, and she
Yay.
comes every week to class and she does her training with me. You know, she uses only little 1 kilo dumbbells,
Yeah.
but we do a lot of stuff and she is amazing.
Mm-hmm. Oh, how cool.
Totally
How
amazing.
cool are those people?
I know.
Love that.
I
I
just
just
hope that
think
I'm like that at her age, you know?
that's what I
Yeah,
was thinking. I look at those people like, I want to be like you.
yeah,
Like when I'm
totally.
70 or 88 or whatever, I want to be like you. I remember there was a lady at the gym I used to train at. She was in her 70s and she was doing some mean hip thrusts, barbell weighted
Mm,
hip thrusts, like not lightweights.
yeah,
And she was a grandmother, and I would just, of all the people in that gym, there were some really strong people. Our coach was, he's coaching Commonwealth level athletes, and I would look at Mary, if you're out there, shout out to you. I'd look at her and just be like, you are awesome.
yeah, I know.
I want to be like you.
They so are. They're just amazing. I love the 70s and 80s, 60s, 70s and 80s bracket because they want to learn so much as well, you know. And I always say it's never too late to start. You can start at any age. It's
Yeah.
important that you start. Doesn't
Yeah.
matter where you are in life. And so they want to learn, they wanted to do it, they are consistent, they come
Mm-hmm.
all the time, you know, they never miss.
Mm-hmm.
They're amazing demographic to work with, really.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I don't doubt it. It must be so rewarding and fun and just,
Yeah,
yeah, a privilege actually to
yeah,
work with some of those
absolutely.
people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, Rochelle, if you had to sum up, say, so we're just coming to the end of our conversation now, but if you had to distill the wisdom that you think is most helpful to women in this midlife kind of
Mm-hmm.
stage, what would be, say, the 2 or 3 main takeaways that you would want them to know
Yep.
when
I
it comes
want,
to fitness and strength and
yeah,
well-being?
that, well, what I just said, it's never ever too late to start. Don't worry about the can't, focus on the can. That's huge.
Mm.
And get in touch with your body. Find that mind body connection, work out how to do that. That's another huge one as well.
Mm-hmm.
Understand you better.
Yeah. And I guess that can come in the form of, just understanding physiology and just basically what hormones are doing. It can come from tuning into our bodies and
Yep.
connecting inwards, as I think you say, and
Yep.
finding out what works for us.
Yep. And
Mm.
the easiest way to do that, and this is what I get all of my clients when they first start, is get yourself a diary.
Mm.
Right, if you're having a period, day 1 is the first day of your bleed. Write down how you're feeling, and then continue on and just do that every day. And it doesn't necessarily need to be about around your period. It can be just that I had a good day today and I'm feeling rather awesome, or I was really tired today. I didn't sleep well last night, or I had a hot flush, or whatever it is. So start writing it down, because then you've got the information to start forming ideas around what your body's doing.
And not with knowledge comes power, right? I mean,
exactly.
I only recently started, my husband and I have a shared Google Calendar where we just stick everything in. And I only recently started putting my premenstrual week, which I call my self-care week, into the calendar. So not my period week, I put that in too, but just so everyone knows, the self-care week is in there. And when I'm, booking clients or organizing my workday, if I see that week, I'm like, okay, I'm going to allow a bit more space between clients, or I might not see as many clients that week. Or I know that it's just a jog to my brain that, okay, well, if I'm feeling tired, that's why. And it's okay. Take a rest, have a day nap, have a nice sneaky day nap. And man, do I feel better when I observe that really natural cyclicity.
That's amazing. I'm so glad you do that, because it's so important. I wish everyone knew that. And a book that I would suggest is Wild Power, if you've probably read it.
Shani John, I can't remember her name.
I can't remember.
Alexander Pope and the women in charge of the red tent. Yes. I think I have that. I haven't I've only flipped through it, but The Optimized Woman is another one that comes to mind by Miranda Gray.
Don't know that one.
That one goes through, so it's specifically about menstruality, and it goes through the 4 different phases of the menstrual of our whole cycle, and she gives them really beautiful and impactful names. So she's got the creative phase, instead of calling it premenstrual syndrome, which is just such a loaded bunch of words.
I know.
She calls it the creative phase, and it's just a real redefining of the way we look at our cycles and how to tap into the potential of each phase. I think she's got a breakdown for, a typical just rough 28-day cycle, and each day what we can be doing to honor our physiology and to optimize things depending on it's a wicked book. I've really
I'll have to get it. That sounds awesome. Love that.
It's good. It's very focused and centered towards work performance, but there is a bit on, just basic physiology in there. But it's good. But I think I need to crack open Wild Power and absorb that a bit more.
You will love it. It's one of the best books I've ever read in that regard. So good.
Wow. One more person who's coming to mind, you might have heard of as well, and this is for the listeners, is now it's escaped my memory, but she's written a bunch of books. One's called 10 Moons, that's specifically for pregnancy. Jane Hardwick Collins. She does a lot of work around menstruality and menopause, which she refers to as the harvest time in a woman's life.
Correct.
Her work is beautiful. It's very earth-based as well.
I don't think I've read any of her books, but I've seen her around, so I'll have to look her up a little bit more too. It's really going back to that primal time, isn't it? All of these books, and I just love how we're going back to the primal time to look towards the future, because I think there's so much in that primal state that we can pull from.
Definitely. And there's so much that we're not pulling from that state now. It's so pathologized. All transitions, anything to do with reproduction in a woman's life. I mean, we live in a patriarchal society, so that's why, which sucks. But I mean, at every point, puberty, pregnancy, menstruality, menopause, it's always like, well, this is what's going to happen, and this is terrible because this and this, and you better watch out for this, and you'll probably need all these medications and this intervention. ovulation. And it's
Yep.
like, wow, really? We want to, yes, there's truth to that, maybe, but we also need to know about what's empowering and what's awesome
Yes.
about these stages, because there is so much potential.
There is. And just on that too, I was reading a study a little while ago, and I'm yet to do some more research on it, but there has been some significant insights into what a woman thinks about what menopause will be like is how her body will react to menopause.
Wow.
So if we go in with a negative connotation of it's going to be bad, it's more likely that it could be bad. So I found that fascinating as well. So that's that mindset. Okay, so maybe some parts of it aren't so good, but what are the better parts of it? So embracing this time of our life, embracing it.
Yeah, it's just such a, there's something that I learned a while back about hormonally what happens during that perimenopausal phase. And it's when, normally when we're still menstruating as women, we get this surge of LH luteinizing hormone and FSH follicle stimulating hormone around ovulation. And that's, at that time when we're ovulating, we are quite electric and, fully open to cross fertilization of ideas or whatever. But once a woman is menopausal, that rather than that LH and FSH peaking just for a short couple of days or one day a month, it's always high. It's like those channels are now open. It's direct current instead of alternating current of just like universal wisdom and power that's just there. If we want to, and if we can tap into it. I found that was really fascinating.
You put that in your article, didn't you? That was just recently that I saw. Yeah, I love that article.
Yeah, I did. So I'm kind of looking forward to it, actually.
Absolutely.
It's not because I don't enjoy menstruating. Like I actually really love being a menstruating woman and just learning about that and embracing that. But yeah, I'm excited just to embrace perimenopause whenever it does happen. And I know it's not going to be all roses, but it's another powerful transition stage in a woman's life. And I reckon we need to just go in like with both arms open.
Agreed. Yeah, I agreed, because we can work around the not so good stuff and just embrace what's happening to our amazing bodies. And that's what I say to all of my clients. Your bodies are so amazing and so intelligent. You've got to embrace what they can do and how powerful they really are.
Yeah, and wow, isn't that going against the grain of our current paradigm, I suppose, of, oh, well, our bodies are going to fail us in this and that way. And we need to, it's like, well, how are they actually supporting us? How are they inviting us into new ways of seeing and being and, all of that now. So, thank you. That was such a delicious talk, Rachelle.
That was wonderful.
Awesome.
Thank you. It was great to get it all out there. I love talking about it. I could talk about it all day.
Yeah, it's a juicy topic, isn't it? It's something that I think the more, women and femmes hear about this, the better. It can only be a good thing. What work, Rachelle, are you currently doing? Is there anything that you want to let folks know about who are listening to the podcast?
At the moment, I'm diving deep into women's health and hormones. So I've just released a women's guide to midlife course, which I'm very excited about. And some of my clients have bought into that and are telling me that they're really enjoying it. So that's really good. And that goes from everything, right through from tracking your periods through to stress and how to manage it and all of those amazing topics, sleep and everything. And movement even is in there. So it's everything that I know and love and have learned, I've put in there. So that's my number one at the moment is that beautiful course.
Oh my gosh. I love the sound of that. And I must say that every time you've said the word tracking throughout this interview, there's like this reactionary trigger in my head that is like, oh, they're going to say macros, tracking macros or calories. But you're like tracking your period, tracking menses. Like, let's track menses, not macros.
Hey, we could so make a meme on that.
I think maybe we should.
Agreed.
So much more kick-ass.
I love that.
Rachelle, where can people find you? I'm sure they're going to want to find you after this. What are your handles and where can they find you?
So it's Me Active Mind Body Life on social, so on Instagram and on Facebook, and then meactive.com.au website. So if you go to the website first, it can take you straight through to those socials anyway.
Fantastic. And it's MEE, isn't it?
MEE.
Me Active.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rachelle. This has been really exciting and juicy, and I just I love everything that you've taught me and that we've talked about.
Thank you.
Just makes me want to be around peri-menopausal women. Actually, is that weird to say?
No.
And postmenopausal women, because the more I put my feelers out there was a stage where I was really just craving the wisdom of women in these life stages. I wasn't really finding it in women in my age bracket. And as I've put those feelers out, I have found some incredibly wise, gracious, kick-ass, just intelligent, wonderful women. And it's such a powerful life stage and a life stage that's got so much potential. And I think you're doing a fantastic job of inviting people to see and embrace that. So thank you.
Thank you, Casey. Thank you so much for having me on your wonderful podcast. I just love everything that you stand for, and really feel that there's a connection. Even though we haven't connected in person yet, I still feel there's a real connection there.
Oh, thanks, Rachelle. Isn't she a gem? Thank you so much, Rachelle, for that awesome and very informative chat. So, as I mentioned at the start of this episode, I just wanted to offer a few post-interview thoughts, branching off from some of the things that Rachelle was talking about. So I guess the whole reason that we even chatted about this stuff in this episode is because the fitness and wellness industries have a very serious diversity problem. And this diversity issue exists in multiple ways. As we focused on in this episode, it certainly exists in lack of representation of older women, and also in the lack of representation of different body types, as well as lack of representation of people on all spots on the gender spectrum. So, and you don't have to be thin or young or cisgender and heterosexual to be fit. Who knew? But true story. And I guess I want to hone in a little bit closer on the way that our modern Western culture fails to honour the rites of passage in a woman's life. And we talked about these in the episode. These rites of passage are also known as the blood mysteries. I've heard it described as. So menarche, the first menstrual period, childbirth and menopause, and of course every menstrual period, every menstrual cycle, really. The patriarchal conditioning most of us swim in also, well, I guess it teaches us to pathologize and despise menstruation, but also menopause, also childbirth is greatly feared, and there's a lot of misinformation about childbirth and how I won't go into it too much. That's for another episode. But basically, in not honoring the natural and normal blood rights that women who bleed, women who have uteruses, women who have female reproductive physiology experience, we really miss the opportunity that these rites of passage provide in terms of understanding and embracing the profound transformations that we go through at these stages, these mental, hormonal, definitely physical, spiritual transformations that we go through. And in shoving that stuff under the carpet, we're really doing a disservice to women. And what I love about Rachelle's work as a fitness professional is that instead of seeing menstruation and menopause as annoying kind of, minor details to try to push through unconsciously or just flat out ignore, she brings these women's rites of passage to center stage. She bases her whole approach to training women around their shifting internal landscape, their cyclical patterns, rather than using, just any kind of external frame of reference or some kind of just rigid program that you'd give to anyone, that you'd give to a 25-year-old man. She doesn't do that. She's a lot more sensitive and intuitive and I guess female, I suppose you could say, in how she trains her clients. I also love that Rachelle is a huge advocate for strength training. I think this is so important, not because strength training makes you a more superior person or better than anyone else or anything like that, but because it can make you stronger. And I've personally found that physical strength that you can create through this kind of training translates to mental strength as well. And I don't know about you, but I can do with, all the mental strength that I can garner. It also has a bunch of benefits. It reduces our risk of so many things. Injury from falls. It reduces our I'll get into that in a bit, but I suppose I just want to point out that strength training can help us see other ways of basically strength training can help us to understand that there are indicators of fitness that are more accurate than whether we have a six-pack or how lean we are. So, for example, can you support your own body weight, say, in a push-up, whether that's a push-up against a wall or on a couch or on the floor with or without knees? Can you pull your own body weight up over a bar? How many points of contact do you need to get off the ground? Can you move a heavy wheelbarrow safely? These, to me, these kind of functional indicators of fitness are so much more valuable than what we look like, and just aren't troublesome in the way that those other things are. So why should women strength train? Of course, we shouldn't do or not do anything. This is all a personal choice. But I did want to just talk a little bit about the many benefits that women can and do get from strength training that we just can't get from running for kilometers on end or smashing it out on the elliptical or high intensity interval training either. Not that there's anything wrong with those things, unless they're done in a kind of obsessive compulsive way or as a way to, control body weight or whatever. But there are benefits we get from strength training, and again, we want to do this without an appearance-based focus. We want to do this, I think, taking on a health, fitness, functional focus is really healthy for us, at least opposed to a body-based one. Basically, when your body is under load, you enjoy benefits that you can't glean from anything else. And the one thing I love about weight training is that all women can do it all through their lifetimes, all through pregnancy, maybe except for right at the end, or if you have some kind of medical condition that says otherwise, and all through our postpartum, of course, maybe not doing that much for the first couple of months after you give birth, but also, perimenopause, postmenopause, when it's done with intelligence and when it's tailored to your body and your needs. When it comes to strength training, we've got a lot of options to choose from. It might involve bodyweight exercises, push-ups, chin-ups, lunges, that kind of thing. Or it might be kettlebells, dumbbells, adding some weight. It might be more traditional weightlifting, powerlifting with a barbell. It is my jam right now and has been for the last couple of years. And there are also practices in sports that involve a strength element. So, Pilates, yoga, aerial and circus arts, those kinds of things. Women strength train because there are many wonderful benefits to it, including stopping muscle wastage. After you turn 30, you naturally begin to lose muscle mass by about 1% each year. And if you're totally inactive, that percentage is quite a bit higher. It can be between 3 and 8% annually. Very few people I know are totally inactive, but there you go. So, increasing muscle mass and strength. And yes, that might challenge some of our societally embedded notions of not taking up more space, but that's a whole other conversation that I plan to cover in a future podcast episode. Although I will speak in a moment to this idea of getting bigger, of getting bulkier if you strength train as a woman. I'll talk about that in a sec. Just wanted to mention some other benefits of strength training. We can prevent falls because when you strength train, especially with free weights, you tend to strengthen the little muscles around joints, the ones that help you with proprioception, staying balanced in space. And so, yeah, I think that strength training is valuable for that, as well as for improving joint function, reducing the risk of injury to connective tissue when it's done right, when you've got a good trainer, if that's the way you want to do it, when it's done intelligently and safely. It can, because there's this potential to put more muscle mass on, just a bit more muscle mass usually when you strength train, there's a capacity for your metabolism to speed up, which personally I've just found means I'm hungrier, so I need to listen to that and eat more, which is not a problem for me. I'm privileged enough to be able to access food, so I can do that. I'm very happy about that. It also helps us to manage diabetes, if you have that, or to reduce your risk of developing diabetes by improving insulin sensitivity. It reduces psychological stress. I can definitely attest to that. And it basically helps us to feel and be more physically capable and independent. Right up until I started any kind of serious strength training, I would have to kind of ask for help when it came to lifting a heavy wheelbarrow or even opening jars sometimes. And now I take pride in not needing to ask my husband to do that stuff for me. And in fact, he often asks me to help him lift stuff now to keep his own body safe. And I can do that safely now. So yeah, hooray for strength training. It's awesome for women, especially if you're a mother, and especially if you're a breastfeeding mother. Again, a whole other episode. I did write a blog article on why strength training is especially helpful for breastfeeding women. I'll put the link for that in the show notes. But now I just want to touch on this idea of women fearing strength training because they're scared that they will get bulky or that they'll put on too much muscle. So there was an article published by Girls Gone Strong by Molly Galbraith that covered this pretty well. So I'll put the link for that in the show notes as well. But basically, this idea of bulky, like, where does that come from? It's a really subjective concept, right? I mean, what is too bulky? for one person. That might be too thin for someone else. But generally, bulky means gaining a significant amount of muscle mass. I think that's what some women, not all, but some women are scared of taking up more space. So I think first we need to acknowledge the size bias and the cultural conditioning intrinsic in these kinds of fears around putting on muscle or getting bigger or getting too bulky. But what I can say is this: if you're thinking about starting some kind of strength training as a woman, it really is very hard for women to put on a lot of muscle. It certainly doesn't happen overnight. A lot of women are scared, if I just start lifting a little bit of weight, I'll just look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. No, no, that won't happen. The women that you, see who put on heaps of muscle or specifically do bodybuilding contests and stuff have likely worked very, very hard for it and arguably have used steroids, performance enhancing drugs, which, we're not we're not doing, hopefully. So, the other thing is that we're worried we're going to look like men or so maybe something like that. Men have something like 20 times more testosterone than women and gain muscle much more easily. And if you're a breastfeeding woman like I am, we have even less testosterone, especially if your baby is quite young. So it's hard to maintain muscle, and when we're breastfeeding we often lose muscle. So if you are interested in that, you can refer to my article about that. So that's all I'll say about that for now. As a final side note, I just wanted to talk about the main patterns of movement that exist and what yoga offers in terms of that. So, our main patterns of movement, we've got our big compound movements: a squat, pull, push, and a jump. There's also, hinging and a few other things, but I think those are the main ones. I'm not an exercise physiologist, so correct me if I'm wrong or if I've missed anything, I apologize. But basically, though, that covers the main patterns of human movement. And in yoga, there is no pulling. There is no pulling. There's lots of pushing, lots of chaturanga, handstand, arm balances, blah, 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 if you're into that. But no pulling and not really much jumping, unless you're kind of jumping forward to the top of your mat from a down dog or something like that. Yoga alone, in my opinion, is not a totally balanced form of movement. And I really, for that reason, I think yoga, #yoga every damn day, is nonsensical. Yoga maybe every second or third day, could be, to me, a more balanced way of doing it. I mean, if you do yoga every day and you really love it, that's awesome. But if you're doing it because you think that's going to cover all bases when it comes to looking after your body, I think maybe look into this a bit more. To give you an idea of my personal practice, I've been a yoga teacher for 14 years. I've practiced for maybe, 18 years, maybe 19, something like that. And for almost that entire time, almost my adult life, I was about as open to strength or weight training as I was to having someone pull my wisdom teeth out with a pair of rusty pliers. By the way, I still have all of my wisdom teeth. But I changed my perspective when I had babies. When I gave birth to my son, my first child, I developed really weak tendons, and this weakness was only compounded when I started doing yoga again, particularly the very yang form of yoga, kind of just doing silly things like handstands a month after giving birth. Don't recommend it. But yeah, even just the normal hatha yoga, vinyasa yoga I'd been taught really wasn't working for me after I had my first child. So a friend of mine who was a personal trainer
convince me to start strength training, and he really had to convince me. And I went along. I think my first few weeks or months of it, I had my baby strapped to me in a carrier. But he, thanks Nick, you know who you are, he introduced me to lifting weights, and the rest is history. So I guess that was nearly 5 years ago. There are a couple of main reasons. I love strength training, particularly using added weight as my main form, I would say, of exercise at the moment, aside from walking and stuff. 3 reasons: efficiency, convenience, and bad arsery, which I know is not really a word, but it's a lot of fun to say. So I find lifting weights or strength training, it's very time efficient. I don't want to spend hours training, and the big compound movements that you perform in, say, a typical powerlifting program, which is what I was eventually taught at a strength and conditioning gym. Those movements are the squat, the bench press, and the deadlift predominantly. Maybe a strict press as well, a military press. And those use pretty much all the major muscle groups, meaning maximal effect for minimal time. And I'm all about multitasking. I don't know about you, but I'm a multitasking queen. Plus, you get you get a bunch of benefits I've already mentioned. So there's that. It's also convenient because I can do it at home. You know, if you have a wall, a couch to do push-ups against, you can use that. If you have small children, anyone with small children knows that it has to be convenient. It has to be, and weight training, strength training has to be consistent to provide the positive benefits I mentioned before. And so you have to be able to do it on a regular basis. Personally, I train 3 to 4 times a week, just depending on how I'm feeling. Almost always, I'd say 95% of that time, I have children either around me or directly on me. Sometimes I use them as added weight. So, you know, I hold my 15, I don't know, actually he's probably more, nearly 20 kilo kid sometimes while I do squats or lunges, of course, using correct form. I have built up to that point of being able to do that. I definitely feel something doing that. So you don't even need equipment to strength train, but if you do have equipment, awesome. At home, if you have access to a gym with a healthy environment when it comes to body acceptance, that would be really nice, but not necessary. And of course, I do have to admit that strength training makes me feel like a badass. I really enjoy being able to do pull-ups again. I haven't been able to do those since I was grade 9, maybe. So yeah, that is fun. It's fun. So basically, in short, I have been teaching yoga for 14 years, and I only practice yoga maybe once, maximum twice a week, for reals. 3 to 4 days a week, I strength train, and I might even do a little bit of conditioning, where I get my heart rate up a little bit higher, like maybe 10, 15 minutes, I don't know, 2 times a week, and other days I'll just walk. I'll go for a bushwalk, which I really love and find meditative. So yeah. Finally, I just want to say that if you're not interested in any of this stuff, that is totally okay. Is being strong that important? Well, you know, personally, as a mother with little kids, I find being strong just makes life easier, especially also when it comes to doing stuff in the garden and hauling dirt around and stuff. I love not getting injured anymore. I used to get injured all the time when I would just run. I also had disordered eating at that point, which definitely didn't help, but I just don't get those injuries anymore. It helps to be properly nourished and to be eating enough to fuel your body. If not adequately, then maybe even a bit more than adequately, just to make sure you're getting what you need. But, you know, even though I prefer to feel strong,
I get that there are plenty of people who don't give a rat's ass about being strong, and that is totally fine. I'm not here to tell you what you should do with your body. I'd much prefer to just share my own experiences and help you discover all the options and explore as you please. And you can then choose what's right and what works for you. And that may well be yoga every damn day. Hopefully not flat out yoga every damn day. Your body needs a break. It may well be ballet instead of bench pressing. It might be Pilates, which I also love. Haven't done for a while. Instead of pull-ups. But then, badassery. I gotta say, I love when women explore and discover and start to really love strength training because, it gives you this feeling that I can't really describe. And it's a good feeling. All right. I'm going to stop there. Thank you everyone for listening. And again, if you love the podcast, please leave a rating and or review or sign up for the Patreon. It's $2 US a month. All right, folks, have a wonderful day, week, month until we meet again. Bye for now.